What's up, fellow producers?
What's up, guys?
Welcome to the Forward Producer Podcast. This episode, we're going to talk about analog versus
digital
with our special guest,
Jed Seneca.
Boom! There's Jed. What up, Jed?
Good morning, everybody.
That's
doing,
right.
bro?
Jed is a good friend of mine that I've known since 1996.
93, Raymond.
Is that when I met you? 93.
We're going to Bethel.
Man, good
together.
God.
Kind of. Let him
Show
know,
my age
Jed.
there a little bit. But Jed is a 40-year veteran, guys, of the music business. He's been an engineer, producer. He and his wife have a fantastic duo singing group. They were signed with Provident Music Group. So
right.
Jed has been in this game for a long time. And what I really appreciate, Jed, is that he's been in it so long, but he still loves it. He's still pursuing excellence in what he does in his craft. He's still learning. He's still going to that next level every single day.
yeah.
And that's what I really appreciate about Jed.
Yeah, Jed. Thanks for being on, sir. We appreciate
Thanks for having
it.
me.
No problem.
We were just laughing a little bit before jumping on here on TikTok and talking about how he birthed the Beatles and the music journey and all this stuff.
That's right.
He doesn't go that deep, but he's the GOAT.
He's the GOAT. He's got over 500 recording sessions under his belt.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably more than that. Like if you count all the little stuff that he's done, but yeah.
This
I
episode's
think we're
gonna
going
be
to learn something today, y'all.
This is going to be good. Come with your thinking hats on and a pen and paper if you do that. Or
Exactly.
your note app on your phone and take some notes. It's going to be good. I think
Yep.
we're all going to get a lot out of this thing. And we want to, without further ado, we want to make sure y'all are aware, forwardproducer.com/ISP, right there.
Uh-huh.
You get your free course, Industry Standard Productions.
Yep, 7 ways to level up your productions. It's really helping a lot of people already, so
got some good
go
feedback.
get it. It's absolutely free.
Absolutely free. Check it out right there. Let us know what y'all think about it. I think it'll help y'all. So we're gonna fire hose, Jed, really quick.
Let's do it.
We're gonna do a segment called Overrated versus Underrated.
That's
Okay.
right.
Okay?
That's an interesting title.
Overrated versus
I
underrated.
know I'm going to get in trouble here.
Hey,
We'll bleep out any
hey, you're the
controversial
GOAT.
stuff.
Nobody. So it doesn't matter.
We'll see what there's gonna be people online that are gonna say, well, it's controversy is what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
But from a professional, it's not controversy, it's facts.
Right.
Well, from my perspective, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the first one we want to talk about is it overrated versus underrated? A Neumann U87.
Overrated because it's too overpriced. You're paying for, the name. It's a great mic. I've used them many times. But I can give you a $300 mic that we tested and we A-B'd in the studio with all of the gear.
Yeah.
Emerald Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. The gentleman that actually did the test is no longer with us. He died. But Audio Technica contacted him and said, we know you have all these vintage Neumann mics. We want to bring in all of our Audio Technica mics.
Audio Technica mic,
Yeah.
dude?
And we want you to, and they had all the test gear.
Yeah.
They
You
had-
say it was $300 mic?
it's actually $150 mic.
The thing is the AT2020
Yeah,
or
those
3030.
mics.
Yeah.
So he tested all those mics, and they put the test gear, the analytical gear on it, and
He's just
What
shaking his head.
He
What
was-
happened, Jed? What happened?
he was showing me his Neumann collection one day.
Yeah.
And he tells me this story, and he says, here's the data. He goes, I love these mics, and they're like $150. He goes, but then I'm looking at my $100,000 mic collection going,
Oh, my
I
God.
just blew it out of the water. But this guy right here is the real deal. He was around in Nashville. He knew, he was the mic guru of
So
Nashville.
which Audio Technica mic did he
All
blow?
of them.
Really?
All of them. Their whole series. They have these high-end tube mics they make.
Yeah.
For $2,000-$3,000, all the way down to the $100 one. He said we did them all at the end of the day. This he was telling me this story 15 years ago or 20 years ago. Wow.
So do you know what chain he used by any chance?
Well, they
doesn't
sure they had SL consoles.
Yeah, it was
a good
about
chain.
the mic. So
Oh, he's pointing
all
this
them.
question for a reason. Go ahead, Ray. Let him know why you're asking this.
no. Well, because I might want to buy an Audio Technica.
Okay.
Well, I let you have one. You should have one. At
Yes,
your
I
house.
do.
Yeah.
It's a 4025. Yeah.
Is it that what it is? I can't remember.
Yeah, I have it at my house.
Yeah.
Jed gave it to me.
So
Because he was whining he didn't have a mic.
then he whined more. He's like, "This isn't a Neumann." How dare you, Jed?
That's funny.
So straight out of the mouth of the expert. Overrated because there's mics out there that sound just as good.
Just as good.
Well, that's in my perspective,
Mhm.
and I saw it a true, analytical thing go down. I saw the results, and I agree with it. The Norman you paying for? What's a new U87 is what, $3,500 or something like that. Hey, if you can afford it, get it. But if you want to get a great sound, go get the audio.
Well, how about this? How about this? You have the money to get the U87. This is a what would you do?
Oh,
Yeah.
Would you get a cheaper mic and get better outboard gear that may cut?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I wouldn't scrimp on the LA2As or the Neve
There
mic
you go.
Freeze, but they have some great knockoffs. But
Yeah.
but I would. Those aren't overrated.
So really, U87 is going to be like down the road after you have this stuff, in your opinion, like after you had your good preamps
Yeah.
and gear.
So I went like extreme, right? So let's
Yeah.
go in the middle.
Okay.
The 414 mic.
yeah.
It's $1,000 mic.
Sennheiser, right?
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
it's a Sennheiser. No, is it Sennheiser?
414.
I can't remember. Who
I
makes
know
it.
what they look like.
Yeah, it's a little
Yeah, it's a
rectangular
Sennheiser.
mic, right?
Yeah.
So the 414, the studio I worked in, and most where I learned how to engineer, did not have Norman mics. The guy wouldn't own them. All right,
he just wouldn't own
he
them.
would not own them because he thought they were overrated.
Oh, he was boycotting them.
Yeah, he boycotted a lot of stuff. I mean, he even said that SSL was a boat anchor.
Oh,
Whoa.
Because he had an Eve console, he had API
Yeah, okay,
consoles,
okay.
right?
Yeah,
he
yeah,
had
yeah.
British consoles that he literally liked, and so the 414 is about $1,000 mic. I think it's an AKG.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That sounds right.
Yeah, and so if you really want a name mic, I would go to that.
Okay.
You spend a lot less money, and it sounds very similar to a U87. Because there's probably people who are going to debate me on that, but I've probably done 300 sessions with a 414. I've worked in studios that had the Norman's mics, and I've used them, and I was like, sounds like
What's the big deal?
414.
Right.
Dang.
So I always I owned a couple 414s in my life and got rid of them.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
so I always tell people, hey man, you're in the A bracket with this Audio Technica. You're getting an A bracket sound. It's bottom of the A bracket, but you get an A bracket sound. A bracket is like top of the line
Sure.
stuff,
Yeah.
sound wise.
That's awesome.
There we go. So next one is UAD Apollo.
Underrated.
Underrated. The Apollo. Yes. That's what I got.
In my opinion, it's the best. It's the best interface out there for the price because it has that built-in processing, and the plugins are built into the unit, and the latency is lower because you get the Thunderbolt. Now,
Let them know, Jed.
Right.
yeah. So you get the latest one with the Thunderbolt 3.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is like,
The real deal.
very good.
Yeah.
If you learn how to use it properly and you learn how to do the low latency in Pro Tools, and I use Pro Tools, so I'm always refer to that. A lot of people don't. They might use Logic or whatever.
Amen, brother.
And I'm not going to comment on that because I'm not a Logic user.
Yeah.
But Raymond is.
Yeah, I use both.
Yeah,
Me
he
too.
uses both. So but the UA stuff it's more expensive, but it's worth the money.
It's awesome.
I got
There
you.
you go.
All right. So the last one before we just get into,
And by the way, I do have a
Apollo.
Apollo, yeah.
Nice.
that
I don't.
use.
I'm left out. I need to get one. so
I have
can do
actually
that.
2 of them.
Technically, yeah.
He's trying to donate an Apollo to me. Is that what he just
I
said?
don't know. It might be blessing.
All right. So the last one is Celemony Melodyne.
I think it's underrated.
Really?
Yeah, because it's truly a box where you can make chicken salad out of chicken crab.
Wait, what does that mean?
Yeah, he just threw a crazy analogy.
Man, I've done so many sessions, and I've heard the players. In Nashville, it's all session players that play on the stuff, right? And they're just like the best in the world, and they'll just kind of listen to the songs. And I mean, they cut some songs. You've been in those sessions where Buddy, my crew of guys, they'll cut 20 songs in one day.
It's crazy.
Country songs, and they're like, "We're gonna make chicken salad out of chicken crab today because it's just
they
a
got
bunch of-
Melodyne.
Chicken salad.
Yeah, well,
out of
Melodyne.
chicken
Oh,
crab.
but that was where the phrase came from.
That was where the phrase came from.
Got it.
But literally, I can take anybody and pretty much make them sound pretty good
With Melodyne?
with Melodyne. Yeah, because
Nice.
it's the autotune is good. I like autotune. I use it a little gentle autotune on most of the stuff I mix.
Mm-hmm.
But when I go to some heavy stuff, the Melodyne and Pro Tools just did a thing. They just changed their software so that Melodyne works better in Pro Tools.
Ah.
It's embedded in it. And I haven't
It's very rare for Pro Tools to do something
I know,
to make it run more
no.
efficiently.
Well, usually when you do Melodyne, you'd have to do it and then you'd have to render it.
Yeah.
It would take long.
Right.
Now it's seamless. It's like supposed to work really good. I haven't tried it yet because it just came out last week.
Right.
And I just
okay.
downloaded it. I haven't installed it yet.
That's one of the dangers of like trying to update too is if you're the first round of updates,
Right.
you're like, my session doesn't open now.
Yeah. Yep.
Crap.
Oh
Right.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I think that was a good session of overrated versus underrated.
Yes, the first time.
We have some good controversy there, probably.
That's right.
Let's
Let us
see.
know in the
Let
comments
us know
if
what
you
y'all
agree
think.
or
Yeah.
disagree.
Let us know. So let's just jump straight in. We just have a bunch of questions for Jed because
Right.
since he so graciously came,
Right.
we want to just drain him of all of his knowledge we possibly can.
Right, exactly.
I love it, man.
So the first question, go ahead, Ray. I'll let
So
you,
the first question is, Jed, who's your favorite artist and songwriter?
Okay, so that changed over the years, but as I got older, and I'm pretty old, guys, it would have to be Paul McCartney.
Ooh, let
And
it
the
be.
Beatles.
Let it be.
Right.
Yep.
And here's why. It used to be I would say like the Eagles or somebody like that, because they were, But when you go back and you really start looking at the documentaries of the Beatles and you see what they had to deal with, they didn't have music stores back then to buy your favorite pedal or your favorite plug-in. They didn't have plug-ins back then.
Right.
If the Beatles said, "Hey, I want this," they had to get a guy who came in with a white trench coat into the studio and design it on the spot.
Wow.
Right?
Like make the
they had to
console?
Manufacture
make
it
stuff,
from the
yeah.
spot.
Like make a mic pre right down
Yeah,
the spot?
they had to make stuff.
So like soldering iron, like the whole nine?
John Lennon was the first one. He was getting lazy, and they used to, back in those days, if you listen to a lot of recordings, and here's a good tip. If you don't have a great singer, but you have a stylist, a guy who's got a great style, like Mick Jagger cannot sing himself out of a wet paper bag, but he sells his music because he's
said
a
it.
stylist.
Right. Yeah.
But listen to his voice. He's not a good singer.
No, right.
He's not. He really
It's
not.
marketable.
But they doubled his voice a lot.
Yeah.
They stacked him.
Let's strength them up.
And they did that with John. John Lennon hated the way his voice sounded. He hated it. He thought it sounded so bad. And so they would always stack him, and he'd have to sing it twice, and he'd have to sit there and match it.
Wow.
And one time he just says, "I'm tired of doing this. Make a box." So they made the first doubler.
Oh my
Really?
Yeah, that kind of stuff. And there's I think it was the EMI studio they were at. I can't tell
In
exactly.
London?
He
In
said
London,
make a
yeah.
box.
Yeah, they had to make boxes. I mean, if you go, I just challenge anybody to go out there and just to go research this stuff. You will see that those guys were on the cutting edge of technology that wasn't even in there yet.
Yeah, and they were real engineer because
Yeah.
they had to engineer the box, engineer
Oh, yeah, man. Yeah.
all the circuitry on
Yeah.
the inside.
When they did that, what's that album we were talking about? Yes, Let It Be? That
Yeah.
documentary.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they showed up to the
on
big
Disney Plus.
movie. They looked around, there was nothing there. They said, "Where's the console?" They said, "Oh, we're going to have to put one together for you."
Right. They had to build it.
Because they couldn't just go buy one at the store.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't going to pull the one out of the studio, right? So,
Right.
yeah, so it was
That's amazing.
that made me turn around and go, "Oh, wow, man, these guys," I mean, we're looking at it through our lenses, like hearing great technology, having all this information in front of us that we know it's just we take for granted. They didn't have any of that stuff. So they were geniuses at what they did.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So I'm a big fan of making fun of Ray whenever he talks about
Me too, man.
fatness and the sound of analog. So how would you describe analog sound? You could use the same terms as him too.
Okay, so it is a warmer sound, and it's a warmer sound because it naturally rolls off the high end.
What do you mean naturally?
So when an analog, when the tape goes on past the head, the recording head, there's a reel to reel, and it's going like right. When it goes past the head, the the electronics puts a magnetic thing on the tape, and that process, the design they did, the technology they used, the process, they have a natural compression, inherent compression that it does to that's where the bottom end warmth comes from, and then it degrades the sound in a way that our ears like it.
Huh.
And so analog actually degrades the sound, but we're so used to it's so musical sounding to us, right?
That's all.
And digital doesn't do that. It's a one-to-one. You give it this, and it gives it right back to you exactly how you give it. And so people were used to this musical, nice sound happening that went away when digital comes in. Everybody freaked out and thought digital was too harsh, too brittle.
Oh, right.
Okay, because it didn't do that process.
Right. So what, digital tape even do that?
No.
Was digital tape 1-to-1?
Digital tape was 1-to-1 because it was still
digital.
Interesting.
Yeah, the way
So
it
like
was
ADAT,
laying it
what
to
you're talking about. Is that what it is, the ADAT tape?
ADAT was one of the first digital recorders that was affordable. So Mitsubishi, when I was working in Nashville
I remember
at these studios, they had Mitsubishi was the top recorder they were using. We had 32-track 1-inch tape.
Right.
Remember, and that was revolutionary for me because I sat in the studio many times before that and used Studer recorders, 2-inch.
Oh yeah, he's the Studer master.
Yeah, he's a Studer master.
Not master, but I've used it. There's a lot of guys.
He's being humble, y'all. He's being humble. We know.
So,
we couldn't do it.
Well, and digital, the digital realms made it a lot easier for engineers because Studer, when you did analog, you had to, if you put an Ampex roll of tape on the reel, you had to get that recorder set for that tape. You had to bias it. You had to set all the little bitty pots and everything.
See, this is how you know he's the master. He knows all about setting the bias.
Right.
That's what engineers had to
is
learn how to do back in the day, in the 80s, 70s, and 80s. Digital, you don't do any of that stuff.
Right.
And so I got in on the tail end of the analog and the beginning of digital in Nashville, so I still had to learn how to do analog, but the digital thing came on really fast, so we quit using analog because the digital and the studios I was working in had great consoles, and so we didn't lose the bottom end.
Okay.
Right? Because the consoles, mic pre's and the EQs and the compressors we're using we had tube stuff.
So you just track
We just
into digital through all your.
We actually liked digital better at the time because it didn't add that other thing to it. We had to compensate
the harshness.
It added bottom end, so we couldn't use as much of the tube stuff because it was double whammying the bottom end, right?
Interesting.
So when we went to digital, that's what I noticed. I was using all these tube mic pre's and all that stuff, and I was like, "Oh wow, man! I don't have to. I can do this instead."
Right.
And so your ears are very key to this too, to learning, training your ears.
So would that technically be? I'm thinking like we're talking about digital actually reproducing the exact sound. So technically, would analog be coloring the sound?
Yes.
So that's what the tape machine would do is color it.
That's a good terminology to use. It would color the sound.
But at the time, they didn't know it was coloring. They're like, "This is it. This is the reproduction of my sound."
Yeah. So when I was, I forgot what year this was. It was the middle '90s.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys know who Chet Atkins is, but Chet Atkins was a big time guitar player out of Nashville.
He's a legend.
He's actually the guy that got Nashville going. One of the guys that got the recording industry in Nashville going.
Nice.
He owned the RCA building, that RCA, that Elvis cut RCA Studio A and then Studio B. And Chet Atkins was doing an album. A guy named David Hungate was producing it, right? The original bass player for Toto.
Yeah, I played with.
Yeah, you
David
did a session
on
that
sessions
I hired
with
you.
Yeah.
And so I was they did it at the studio that I was working a lot at, and I was heavily engaged, and I got invited to go and see this AB. They said so. This was a console. It was a Calrec console. It was an English console.
Nice.
Which is like a upscale SSL. I call it. It sounds like a Neve, but it works like an SSL kind of thing. And,
fanboys are going to be upset with him talking like that.
Yeah, man. Well, the SSL had all the bells and whistles on it. That's why everybody loves it, right? It's got all the compressors and all that stuff.
So it had the best of both worlds.
It had the best. So the Calrec was the best of the Neve and the SSL kind of thing.
Oh, nice.
That was my take on it. So we had a 32-channel channels on this side, 24 channels on that side, and you could flip a switch and go hear that mix, or you could hear that mix. Right? And so they decided to record in both analog and digital at the same time.
Yeah.
And then they set the mixers and they mixed this side, and then they mixed that.
You
side.
were there?
Yeah, I was there. And then boom, boom, boom.
Wait. So
boom.
I'm going to pause you just for a
Yeah.
second, because I know there's some younger people that are on this that they're like, the mix, I just do the fader on Pro Tools or on Logic. What you're talking about is they had the console, they had whatever they recorded to tape or to digital, they'd route it back out into the preamps, into the console like that.
That's right.
So whenever you mix an analog fader up and down, it's adjusting the volume.
It's
when you
adjusting
EQ
the
it, it's
volume.
adjusting
It's
it.
all on the channel, and it's all analog.
So when they switch it, they're switching from this entire mixer console.
Right.
And then when
Over
you switch to
to-
this one, it's switching to that
So
one.
to even take it one step further, to clarify, we were using a digital recorder with an analog console. Okay, and so when the digital recorder would just feed it back in to the console for us to hear it.
The same exact files
Same-
going to this, same exact
Yeah.
files going
But
to
then
that.
you had an analog.
Then I had an analog recorder that we plugged into this side of the console that we recorded at the same time. We just, piggybacked it. And so we would start the tape, and you could sync them together so that they're exactly at the same spot.
Oh, cool.
And so we would start the tape, and they were both running, and then we would hit that side of the console and listen to
Boom.
it, and then we would hit that side of the console. So
Boom.
we were listening to the digital recorder or the analog recorder.
Dude, that's got to be the ultimate. So what were the
That
what
is
were
the
results?
ultimate A/B test.
Right. dude.
Everybody in the room, and we're talking heavyweight people, Chet Atkins, everybody in the room agreed on one thing.
What?
The only difference we heard was the hiss.
No.
Don't you tell us that, Jed.
I'm telling you, I was there.
Wah, wah, wah.
And that's because
The hiss on the analog tape. That's all. That's the only
that's
difference.
where we were going. All we hear is the difference is the hiss. And we're talking heavyweight people. We're
Hey,
talking
I'm-
about the bass player.
I
for
wasn't in the
Toto
room, but
producing it.
I acknowledge what you're saying there.
I know. Much
Yeah.
respect.
And that's how I remember it. I was there, right? I saw it go down, and I was like, "Whoa!" This
So
is amazing.
no,
you
no
agreed, though?
volume.
I did.
No volume difference. No nothing.
No, because we mixed
They
it
matched
so
it
that
all.
it would match. We just
So
wanted
is
to
it
hear
completely
the quality.
A,
We wanted to
B?
hear-
So the analog didn't have an increased fatness. Was there no increased fatness?
There was no increased fatness. Only because we were going through a fatness board to record both.
It was already fat going
Already
in.
Fat going
Fatness
in.
was baked
Okay.
in.
Right. It
So the-
could have had a little bit, but I'm telling you, you're talking about overrated, underrated.
Yeah.
The analog versus digital
So-
is an
so
overrated,
this is-
underrated statement.
So this is from the mix stage of it, is what
Yes.
you're talking about.
Yes.
The mix comparison, not a recording comparison, which he's getting all upset about the fat.
Well, it is
No,
a
but-
recorder.
Yeah.
We were comparing recorders on the same analog console, and I could get two of the engineers that they're still alive today that were in the room, and they will verify
I
that.
need to call them.
And you agree?
No,
you agree
we
with them?
believe you.
Yeah.
I remember back in the day in the garage studio, I had some girl come in and she was a rapper, and she's like, "Man, I just want to get this sound. There's like a distortion hiss sound like what Lady Gaga has." And I looked at her, I was like, "You want that sound because you think it's gonna make your music go viral?" Yeah, that's probably it. I'm like, that's what it is. It's probably a tape hiss that's in there that she's hearing that's saying
Yeah.
like, "What is that? I want that on my thing."
Okay, so you know how I told you would say things that would remind me of something? I got to tell you all this quick story.
Let it rip, Jed. We
All right.
need it.
Yeah.
'Cause it does deal with this lo-fi thing you're talking about. I'm sitting in Javelina had two studios in Nashville. We called it Javelina's a wild pig in Texas,
Right.
and the owner was from Texas, so he called it Javelina. And so the big studio, you could play basketball. And
It was huge.
We called it Big Pig, and the little studio on 19th, which is it was a medium-sized studio, was
Yeah.
called Little Pig.
Right.
I was working in Little Pig one day, and somebody was beating on the door, and I could hear this, because I had my control room door open, and I looked at the camera, and there's some brothers, some ghetto brothers at the door.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't want to open this door here,
Yeah.
but there was one guy in a suit, and I'm like, oh, so I go up there and I through the glass, I said, "Can I help you?" He says, "We want to rent your studio." And he had a suit on and everything. So I opened
my
the door,
God, who
and I
was
said, "Hey, what's up?" And it was like five brothers and this guy. They were all brothers, but this guy had a suit on. He must have been their manager or something.
Right.
He says, "Yeah, we decided we want to rent a real studio to do our rap stuff."
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've never done rap. Come on in.
Come on in.
They were making me do stuff that I learned not to do.
All right.
They wanted to distort it. They wanted this stuff, and that's where they just want this certain sound. And I was laughing. And they were like, "Why are you laughing?" I said, "Because I'm doing everything that I was taught not to do as an engineer."
But they're trying to get a sound out of it.
They wanted
I
a
guess.
certain sound, and I was giving it to them, man.
Man,
Yeah,
that's
it was a
crazy.
pretty interesting thing. I made a lot of money from them because they came back like 20
Come on
times.
in.
Come on, I'll make this thing distort all
That's
the way.
what we got to do as producers, right? Come on in.
Come on.
Yeah.
And
But
if they're
yeah.
cool people,
But I understood. I learned. They were trying to get a sound. They were trying
Right.
to be innovative.
Yeah.
Right.
And they were degrading the sound to what they liked. They thought sounded good.
well,
Yeah.
modern rap mixes now, they do a thing, like some of them may put a little clipping on the main vocal, but they'll do an ad-lib track that is a telephone with distortion,
Yeah.
Sure.
reverb, delay. You hear it on all of them. And that's
Yep.
probably like maybe the evolving from that sound into what it is now, or maybe that was them catching that. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Ray's want to talk about the next point we have up there.
Right. So, we're still kind of in that vein, analog versus digital. So, can we walk us through? We've done the recorder. So, walk us through the difference between analog effects and then digital effects. Because I know a lot of the digital stuff is trying to emulate the analog effect.
And
Okay.
doing it really well.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Walk us
in
through
my
that.
arsenal, I have all of the Abbey Roads plates and chambers.
And you feel
Waves?
like
Plates and chambers.
The waves?
Yeah, the waves.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love.
I thought he had the real stuff. I was like,
Well, no.
No,
So I'm getting ready to talk about the real stuff.
yeah,
though.
but we're talking about analog versus digital
Right,
effects.
right.
And
So
you-
those plugins are obviously digital, right? Because they're in the box, they're in the computer. But at the same studio, at the Big Pig at Javelina, they had a back room, and in that back room were two big wooden crates that
Right.
were like 10 foot wide and about 4 foot tall and about a foot that thick.
Uh-huh.
And there were literally metal plates.
Metal plates in there.
And those were EMT plates that were made out of England. And they had a big old knob on the top that the decay of the reverb, you turned it to be long or short.
what?
Yeah. And I learned how to mix with those
Uh-huh.
plates. And that's what the Abbey Road plates, the plugins emulate those real plates.
Right.
They're the best things I've heard that sound, because I had the real plates. I used them for years, and those are analog, because you would take a signal, run it and they would pop it on the plate, and the plate would vibrate, and then they had pickups that would pick up the sound.
So you're saying these digital effects
Yeah.
are running signal the same way an analog signal would run?
No, I'm saying that
That
the
was the
digital
analog.
effects are emulating that.
Okay.
There, and Lexicon was probably one of the first ones
Oh,
that
right.
came out that
Yeah.
really did a good job.
Right.
Because I couldn't afford.
Nobody can
can
afford
get
it.
those plates. First of all, who would want to have that big box in your house, right, or your studio?
Right.
Nobody, or even in your studio.
Like I've seen them. They're
huge.
massive.
Yeah, I mean, you would take 3 guys to move it around. In
Probably
a pickup
what,
truck.
10 foot,
Yeah, they're
10, 15 foot
Huge.
long.
Yeah. So
Crazy.
I say this: if you have a studio with this in it, use them. Right? But the chances of you seeing one, anybody out there that's listening to this, probably never going to see one of those because they're rare now. And so you have to use digital, and there's some phenomenal digital stuff out there.
That's cool. Well, that's huge.
I put a little peace of mind to some of them plug-in people out there.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
I love plug. That when you said it earlier that I like the best of both worlds.
Yeah, best of both worlds. Yeah.
You're hybrid.
I did an album that Claire and I recorded, a bunch of songs, and I was so into this analog versus digital thing. I recorded analog and dumped it to digital.
Right.
Because I liked some of the digital stuff, how fast it was, how easy it was.
Yeah.
And the clarity, no hiss on the vocal track.
Yeah.
I don't, I can take hiss on a bass guitar because you can roll that off. I can take hiss on anything else, but I hate hiss on a vocal track.
Right. All right. So we've talked about recorders. We talked about effects. So what about analog consoles versus digital consoles?
I love them all, right? Because I always use mic pre's and I use external gear to get the sound out if I have it. If I
Right.
can get it. Okay. Unless I had a Trident console or API console or a Calrec or a Neve.
Yes.
You don't need as much outboard gear, right?
Right.
So, but So if I was in the little Javelina, the little studio. Warren Peterson was the owner. Warren Peterson did all the Willie Nelson records, right?
Okay,
That's who taught me how to engineer.
Yeah.
And above, that's not the only thing he's done. He's done tons of stuff. But I learned how to engineer from that guy.
Yeah.
He called me one day. He says, "Hey, I need you to come over to the studio. You're the kind of the whiz kid on the technology, and I was younger then, and I was the guy because he didn't want to mess with Pro Tools.
Yeah.
And Pro Tools hadn't hit yet, and it was the Neve people there installing a Neve Capricorn digital mixer.
Oh, I think I've heard that.
It was $1 million mixer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've
that was the first
I've
digital
recorded on
mixer
that
I ever encountered, and I learned how to use it, and I fell in love with it.
So it was the best of both worlds. Like it was Neve fatness.
It was
fatness.
it was the creme de la creme.
Did you mix on it?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was doing a session with all these top players, and there's a digital board in it called the Matty board, and it went out in the middle of the session, and I freaked out. So I called the Neve guy and I said, "Hey," he came up there with a board, popped it in. I was up and running in 5 minutes.
What?
Yeah. So I was like, dude.
Because literally, when you're in those big sessions with those big players, time is money.
Oh yeah, man. It's the studio in those days was $2,000 a day to rent, and those players were making $1,000 every 3 hours.
I bet with the $1 million board in there.
Yeah.
Sheesh.
Yeah. Fun stuff.
So we have another question.
Yeah.
What are your top 3 ways to get a digital recording, digital anything to sound analog?
Okay, so the first rule is you got to train your ears to know what analog sounds.
That's
supposed
good.
to sound like, right?
Because not the gear, it's the
Ear.
Yeah. If you can't hear it, you can't get it. Right?
So we should be listening to those analog.
You should listen to. I did it this way.
Yeah.
Every time I go set up a PA, every time I go in a new studio environment, I play certain songs that I know.
Yeah.
How they sound and what they sound like, and they're accurate analog mixes.
Right.
And then I listen to the speakers, and if it's real boomy, I'm going, oh, this room's not tuned right, because I know those records sound good. And like if you take it in a mastering lab that's accurate as can be, and you listen to it, it sounds right.
Right.
And if it sounds right in the mastering lab, then now that's your reference, right?
Got it.
Train. You gotta learn it. James Taylor. A lot of you young folks might not know who he is, and you may have heard his songs before. His song "Fire and Rain," that song right there.
I've seen fire.
I've seen rain. That's a great song for reference.
Steely Dan.
Steely Dan.
Donald Fagen's.
Yeah, all the Steely Dan stuff is accurate.
What about Back in Black?
Yeah, that stuff's accurate too.
I like referencing that one.
If you like AC/DC, that's a good one. They're going to all those analog of the late '70s, early '80s.
Mm-hmm.
If you go early '70s, the mixes aren't as accurate. They were still, coming up with technology, but the late '70s on to the '90s.
Dude, Def Leppard's record to me is like super analog sounding.
Yeah, all of those records were still being
Photograph
cut.
and all that stuff.
Pro Tools hit in the early '90s, maybe. I remember Warren, the owner of the studio, calling me again saying, "Hey, they got a Pro Tools thing. Some company called Digico, whatever,
Digidesign.
Digidesigns. That's what they were before Avid. They got this new thing called Pro Tools. I'm not interested in it. Figured you might want to go check it out.
You're the young pup here. We gotta let you get on the technology.
And we didn't even go.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
But years later, we had to. Right. So,
right.
Yeah. I'm glad. I'm a Pro Tools. I'm a mouse guy. I don't need a console. Give me mic pre's and all that stuff now, and give me a Pro Tools rig, and I'm happy.
All right, so that was one. Listen to old records. What's like 2 and 3?
Use Waves plugins. No, just kidding.
Yeah, I think number 2 tip is really understanding what's digital and what's analog. Right?
Okay.
There's a big misconception of what that stuff is. It's like when you say, "Yeah, bring me a Coke," right?
Right.
You might want a Pepsi, but you say Coke because Coke's the general term now. Well, that's kind of like what this is. Yeah.
Okay.
So really do your homework and understanding the difference between digital and analog, because it gets kind of muddy there, and people think digital's something when it's really not, and analog's something when it's really not.
Right.
Analog, like for instance, a tube amp is basically an analog piece of gear, right? But a solid state amp is an analog. So you don't have tubes, you have chips in there.
Oh, right.
But they're still both analog. But
Right.
some people might go, oh, that's a digital because it doesn't have a tube in it, which is not really true.
Then you got line 6, little computer brain.
That's a
into
digital
it.
amp.
That's a digital.
It's got processors in it and all
Yeah.
that stuff. That's the digital
Right.
version of the amp. And that's all solid states. There's no tubes involved.
Right.
So you need to understand what the difference is. Between
I would study that, because then you're going to start understanding what that
That's
truly
good.
is. Yeah.
That's good.
And I forgot what the third thing would be. Do you remember?
I don't.
The most important thing about that is training your ear, man.
Yeah.
Training
That's
your
the
ear.
big thing.
Yeah. And don't get hooked up that on one way or the other, because it's all like noses. Everybody has one, right? Opinions,
Right.
right? And so, that's not the real term, but I'll choose
You're
not
keeping
to
it
use I'm
Christian
keeping it
for us.
Christian, right?
Right.
So the thing about it is that everything I'm saying is my opinion and my perspectives. And eat the meat, spit out the bones. I do have a lot of experience doing it, and I do have had some success getting good sounds. So you might want to listen to guys like me, but then eat the meat, spit out the bones, and go learn it from yourself. Don't take what I'm saying for granted.
Yeah.
Go figure it out yourself.
check
too,
it out,
you know?
yeah.
Use what I'm doing, and expand on that.
Right.
That's great.
You know?
So we want to jump into some practical tips.
Yeah.
So we want to know some tips on recording acoustic and then also electric.
Okay, so you're listening to me in stereo, by the way, right? You have 2 ears.
Right.
So the room is giving a little bit of ambience, and then your ears are perceiving it. Now, I'm sitting just not quite in front of me, so one ear is catching
Right.
you more than the other. So if you want to capture an acoustic guitar and try to emulate like what your ears are hearing it, you really got to learn that concept. So one day I was putting a mic there, and I was like, well, I'm not capturing what I really hear. And I thought, oh, what if I put a mic right here?
By your ears.
By my ear. I put a mic here and I put a mic there, and you pan it, and I'm like, oh, that's what I'm listening for.
So you put a mic on like the 12th fret, I guess, and then one overhead?
It doesn't have to be the 12th fret, because different guitars sound different. So you have to
different
kind of
spot.
investigate that. You don't want too much muddiness, but you do want some warmth, because if you go too far, you're going to get nothing but a lot of the chingy stuff.
Yeah.
So you want to kind of investigate from the hole to the 12th fret.
Okay.
Kind of, and maybe
Depending on the guitar.
maybe 6 inches from the guitar, depending on the guitar and how the person's playing it.
And then that's another good tip, man. Like, it's very instrument dependent. So
Yes.
don't
And
everything's
player,
not
too.
cookie cutter.
No,
Just
it's
because
not.
something
It's
works
using
on-
your ear.
Right.
Using your ear.
That's a big
Train
tip.
your ear, man.
Yeah.
And so
Explore the space.
Yeah. The best thing I tell young people is man, use your ear. You're listening to me in stereo, so everything we got to do it in stereo.
That's
right?
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you put a mic up here and you put a mic there, you're going to get a nice stereo spread, a natural stereo spread.
Uh-huh.
And this is going to add a dimension that's going to make it sound natural to you. And that's what most people don't get, the natural sound.
Right.
They get the front sound of a close mic. And I do that with drums too, by the way.
Yeah.
So,
Nice.
I don't mic drums. And that's another tip, mic and drums. You don't want to mic drums like they're 8 different instruments.
Okay.
You want to mic drums like it's one set of drums.
Right. I actually follow, if I'm having to do a mix on drums, I actually do what Jed first mixes the room first, and
Yeah,
then
and then
bring
I
up
add-
the individual.
I add the clarity. That way it sounds like a set of drums. I don't.
It's right.
The drums sound like drums.
Like when he said that, I was like, man, that makes a lot of
Yeah, it makes
sense.
a lot of
Because
sense.
when you're playing and you're in the room, you hear the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, which brings me to a story.
Let's go ahead. Let it rip.
Yeah.
You know that the Eagles, when they got their deal on Geffen Records, the guy David Geffen decided to get him a producer, so he gets him the producer that produced Led Zeppelin,
Right.
right?
Right.
And the British guy, Glenn John, and he actually did the Beatles too.
Okay.
He engineered the Beatles stuff a lot.
Yeah.
He engineered that documentary you were watching the other day.
Right.
And that guy, he would not close mic anything.
I remember that
Right?
on the documentary. Right.
Yeah, and you can go watch the Eagles documentary and hear Don
Henley didn't like
kill it.
that.
He didn't like the guy.
Yeah.
And it's because he wanted it to sound like a set of drums.
Right.
And actually, I mean, Led Zeppelin drums sound great, right?
Right.
Rock and roll. So I kind of learned that.
Yeah.
And then I saw an engineer in Nashville miking, doing some miking techniques. I used to always be able to hang out in these studios, right?
Yeah.
And when I knew some big time engineer was coming in, I would sneak in because I had keys to the place, and I would see how he was setting up, and I would act like I'm doing something in the other room,
Wrapping up cable.
Hey, you need any help? I work over here. Yeah, can you do this? And I saw a guy mic drums a certain way, so I just had to ask him. I'm like, hey, why?
Right.
Right. He goes, because I want them to sound like a set of drums. I'm like, okay.
Okay.
And that's
Fair
where I
enough.
got that from.
So
All right,
that'll lead us into recording electric guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah, so electric's easy. Don't screw it up. Let the guitar player give you the sound and capture it. Don't think you have to create his sound. If he's not giving you a good sound, make him give you a good sound. Make him work it out himself so that you just put a 57.
Uh-oh.
SM 57.
Overrated, underrated.
That's underrated.
It is underrated.
Because most people out in the world don't understand that every session I've ever done and every guitar player, that great guitar player I've ever worked with, demanded an SM 57 on their speakers.
Yeah.
And they would. Brent Mason is probably one of the top 5 most recorded guitar players in history. Played on every country hit you can imagine for the last 35 years. Good friend of mine. I accidentally moved his mic on his amp a little bit to the right because I moved it, and I was in there doing something in the back room where we put his amp, and it moved, and I go, oh, so I pushed it back. And he goes, hey, Jed, did you move my mic? I'm like, oh, maybe. I don't know, man. I kind of tapped it. He goes, oh, okay.
Those guys can hear that
He
stuff.
pops it right. I mean, he knows exactly where that mic's got to go.
Wow.
A good guitar player will give you the sound.
That's
just don't
really
muck
good.
it up. It's not what you do. It's not what you don't. It's what you don't do that counts, right?
Right.
Don't think that you have to be an engineer and create something, because those guys are so good, man.
Yeah.
And you have to be an engineer to mic drums. You have to be a good engineer to mic a piano.
Sure.
Right? Because you got to listen to the piano. Some pianos sound muddier than others. You got to change whether some, like with country, you put the piano mics way up where the hammers hit because you want that bright cut through. But if you're going to do somebody singing with a piano in an auditorium, well, you're going to get more ambience on the piano. So you're going to mic it differently, right?
Right.
And so those are the kind of things you have to learn how to in engineering. But on an electric guitar, man, those guys, but they're going to give you a good sound.
So really what you're saying is the player better know what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Or you got to teach them to do it right.
Right. Like, for instance, I had one bass player come and go, hey, I didn't bring anything. Can you put an EQ and a compressor on there? I'm like, no. And then I backed off. No, you're supposed to give it to me better. Like that.
Yeah, you're technically a professional.
Really well,
do your job, and I'll do mine.
You have one job to do, and that's give me a great bass sound.
That's all
Why
you
would
got to
someone
do.
My
come
job
in
is
there
to
like
capture
that? Why would they come in there like that?
He just, he was a good friend of mine. I was messing with him because he knew that I would be able to do it.
He knew your capability.
He knew what I was going to do. I'm like, no.
Right.
But the
point is,
yeah.
Have good players that know what they're doing. To
Every
give you
player
the right
that I've
thing.
ever worked in Nashville that's in the A team, on the A team, which we call, there's tons of those guys that we call on the A team.
Yeah.
You don't mess with their sound. You just capture their sound. And that's
awesome.
That's a fact.
Well, I know we got a lot of stories out of Jed, but we have one particular, so we'll let Jed tell us another story.
Which
Well-
one? Oh yeah.
Are we talking about mono versus stereo, or are we talking about?
Oh, that's right. I skipped that one.
Did you?
Yeah, the good thing you remembered. I have notes here, and I
That's a
skipped it.
great story.
We'll do it.
Yeah, that story is relevant to what we're talking about. So
The first question was, should you mix in mono?
Yeah, so you never mix in mono.
Right.
You mix in stereo, but you reference to mono.
Always reference to mono.
Yeah,
I need to start doing that.
Yeah.
I haven't been doing that.
Because what happens is if you start mixing stuff stereo and something's out of phase, when you hit the mono button, it's going to go away. And people will listen in mono, sometimes. And, there's still AM radio out there.
Well, they listen off of this.
Yeah, that too. And so,
This guy right here-
but this is stereo, isn't it?
No,
No, it's
if you
not.
hold it like this,
It's-
it may go stereo. But if you hold it like this,
it's
mono.
Okay.
sort of kind of. You can't hear it in stereo, but it's coming. There's supposed to be two speakers.
well,
Coming.
and they have the speaker here is not the same speaker as this one.
That's right.
So even though they're pushing out a stereo signal,
It
this one
sounds
sounds
mono.
weird.
Oh, okay.
But the mono, there's the analog version of mono, which is literally a mono button on either your little control unit or your mixing console, or they have plugins that you can simulate.
All right, so look,
mono.
when I press that mono button, what am I looking for? What am I listening for?
You're listening to make sure nothing
sure it sounds
goes
good.
away. Like, does the bass stay there?
Oh, okay.
Does half of your guitar signal go away, or something like that? There's all kinds of things. You will hear something weird go down.
Okay.
If you will hear.
Because honestly, I need to do that. I have not been checking mono.
You really should, and also
and what
what
I'm
mono
doing.
does is it really gives you a true blend to check. Something may pop out that's way too loud,
Right.
that you're not hearing properly. Usually that's because you're listening to your mix too loud when you're mixing.
Got it.
'Cause the energy,
right.
Yeah,
I
right?
don't do that.
Yeah, you gotta listen to it at the right level.
So that's like
So-
I know whenever I track drums, if your cymbal mics are not in phase with the snare correctly, when you go to mono, it's like your cymbals are going to sound weird, or your
Yeah.
snares are going to sound weird.
That's why you got to check your phasing on. They got little. You always go, why do they put phase buttons on everything?
And that's why.
That's why. Did you check that with your mono button?
Right.
You check
right.
your drums.
Can you give us a nerdy description of what phase actually is?
Yeah, so I can give you a nerdy to technical. 'Cause
Yeah,
I
correct.
actually
I
went
mean
to
the correct
I
definition.
went to school to be an electronics technician, so I'm a bona fide electronics guy.
Ooh.
And so signals have waveforms, right?
Right.
So a waveform could start here, go up, come down, and come back out.
Yeah.
So if you have one that's out of phase, it's going to start at the bottom and go up and go down. So you have one going up and one going down. So they're out of phase.
They cancel each other
and they
out.
cancel each other out. That's a phase
That's
thing. And so what it does is the button on the console flips that phase. And there's some people that actually like that. Brent
I
Lowen-
actually like it on snares sometime.
Yeah.
Because it makes snares pop.
Yeah,
sounds
you
better.
always want to have. Yeah, it can.
Well, the bottom mic.
you know what
and the
makes
top mic.
snares pop now?
What?
Just go, using a
Get-
plug-in
get
and
the
add 7 snare drums to the original. That's what makes it pop.
Sound
7
replacement.
different snare
That's-
drum samples,
sound-
different recording
Right.
sessions,
That's right.
mixed in.
Don't ever take away the original, but add to it. That's what I love about the plugins and digital now.
This is coming from a 40-year vet, y'all.
Yeah, man.
He's saying put those samples because you want it to sound good.
Do you know what? It doesn't matter how you get it.
Oh, come on,
Break every rule in the book if it sounds good.
Come on,
I don't
Dad.
care if it's the red it's going through the roof on the meter. If it sounds good, forget about it.
Right.
Come
It
on.
just-
Do it. That's the first rule. That's one of those tips. Don't look at your meters. Listen.
Listen
Listen with your ears, not your
Yeah.
eyes.
That's good.
And start using VU meters, by the way.
Uh-oh.
Oh, yeah. Will you do that? I know that's an extra thing, but recently Spotify has changed some of their.
Yeah, all the
Can you-
platforms now have.
Will you walk us through that?
They've kind of decided to, and they've gotten technology that they do their own kind of mastering.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so if you plaster yours and you fill the meters, we call it, you know the makeup button on the
makeup
SS
gain.
consoles and all that.
Yeah.
That makes it squeezes it makes the average listening level louder. So when you do that and you make your mix real loud, what's going to happen is Spotify's going to see that signal as being hot and it's going to lower it.
How far down?
Like
To
really
their average.
Yeah, so what you think let's say somebody that didn't do it, yours is going to sound less than theirs because that technology is not working on theirs as much as yours.
And their dynamics going to be hitting better.
Yeah,
So
they're-
what-
exactly. Their
So then, what's
dynamics are gonna be
the
better.
solution to that Spotify change?
Mix with VU meters, then you can see your average listening level better than digital meters.
Okay.
And then and don't think you have to get it as loud, right? Turn the speaker volume up if you want it loud. Don't make it loud by digitally, squeezing the signal.
Because
with-
they're going to
with
turn it
limiters.
up. Because they're going to turn it up.
You know.
They're going to turn it down.
They're going to set it to where they want it.
Yeah, they're going to drop it down, and as soon as they drop it, they just do it across the board. Every signal is going to be here. So if your peak is there, they're going to bring it down. If their peak is there, they're going to bring that down. But their dynamic range on somebody that didn't do it as much, it's going to sound better.
But what if it's lower? Will they bring it up?
Yeah, it brings it up.
Normalize
Okay.
it. Is that you think that's because they know there's going to be non-mastered, non-expertly done stuff, and they want it to everyone's listener experience to be even across the board.
They want it all to be even.
Interesting.
So that's like the mastering side of it too, because you can mix, and then if you send it off to mastering, you got to let them know, like, hey, I don't want my thing to sound quiet because it's mastered brick wall to the top.
Yeah, you could just tell them, hey, I really want it to be dynamically good for the digital platforms. You know, the phones have that technology built into them in your little iTunes player.
Ah.
You know how you can make it all sound the same.
Oh, that's right.
That's basically what Spotify. I'm sure that's where they got the technology from.
Gotcha.
Thanks for reminding us about
Well, let me tell you
mono.
about that story about Al Pachuki, this mono to
Right,
thing,
right,
okay?
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really funny. So the very first session I ever walked in, I was an intern at a publishing company in Nashville. I was a production assistant. We were doing a session. These two guys from Atlanta come in, and they hired this studio and this engineer, a guy named Al Pachuki, did all of Elvis Presley stuff. He flew him to Hawaii when Elvis did the big Hawaii thing.
Yeah.
He flew Al Pachuki on a private jet just to mix the record. And Al Pachuki just had to look at the console and go, yep, that's a good console. And that's all Elvis needed. That's the guy. So I'm in the studio with Al Pachuki, old guy, you know, and he's mixing this thing, and these guys from Atlanta, I can see there's something ain't right. And I'm looking at it, and I'm just a fly on the wall watching this, right? I mean, I'm 6 months into Nashville. And finally, one guy pops up. He says, hey, Al, I'm not digging the snare. Can you do something about that snare? So Al Pachuki says, see all those gold records on the wall? That's me. You just need to sit over there and be quiet. I'm serious. The guy goes, are all those in mono or stereo? They're so old. They're in mono.
He's so old.
Oh, that was a good comeback. He started laughing.
Oh, really? He liked that comeback?
He liked it. That was a good one. Because he was messing with him. Right?
Right.
He was messing with him. He fixed the snare. You know, it was just had some overtone to it.
Right.
Oh, the drummer just put one of those gels on it or something.
Gels.
Right,
You know,
right.
Yeah, it was one of those moments. But Al Pachuki, and then he quit and became a butcher. I'm serious. He was done. The old guy.
He got enough gold. He's like, well, we have to
Yeah.
conquer this butchering.
I did the king of. I mean,
Yeah.
What else is there?
Yeah, he did it, man. He did a lot of stuff for RCA back in the day. That
That's
guy.
cool.
But it was all in mono.
That's hilarious.
Wow.
But I mean, those guys, man, they had to pave the way, right?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. So.
So we had another story.
Oh yeah, I got a funny story. You know, one of the things that I had the benefit of doing all those years is running across. I was in country and Christian music, so I had those two realms, just like Ray Dog was in Christian music. So I was at the Little Studio on 19th Avenue. So Nashville's Music
Little
Row.
Pig. Little Pig.
So Music Row's three streets, 4th Street, 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th.
Right.
1 mile long.
Is that the houses that are converted?
Yeah,
Ah, we
and they're
talked
doing
about
away
Yeah,
with a
yeah.
lot of those because people are buying them and making other buildings now.
Yeah.
But back in those days, it was all old houses. Well, Little Pig was on 19th, Big Pig was on 17th, right? And so it was 2 streets over, and it took about 3 minutes to get from one studio to the other. So I was in the small studio working late. It was probably 7 o'clock at night one night, and the phone rings.
Yeah.
And I answer it, and the person goes, hey, let me in. And I'm like, who's this? She goes, Winona. I go, Winona Judge. She goes, yeah, I'm over at the studio, and I went to dinner, and I need to get in.
This is when she was a big dog already.
Yeah, oh yeah, this was her first album. Coming off of the Judds. Right?
Okay,
This
yeah.
was like the big thing right here.
Yeah.
And so I'm like going, okay. I said, well, I'm at the other studio. Obviously, they're not back from dinner, but I have a key. I'll come over and let you in. She goes, oh, that would be so nice of you. Thank you. So I drove over 2 streets, walked in. There she is, waiting in the little tunnel to get into the back door of the studio.
Yeah.
So I see her. I meet her. I introduce myself. I let her in, and I let her in the studio, and I go to the big, and this is a studio where you could play basketball in.
Right.
In the studio part.
Yeah.
And I
This
looked
is the
in that.
swine. No, the
The
hog.
big
Big
pig.
pig.
And I look over in the studio and I see just all these candles, like big candles everywhere, and I see furniture and I see couches and chairs and rugs on the floor. It didn't look like that the day before,
Right.
with the other session. I'm like, what happened here? She goes, oh, I like to have my furniture put in when I do my vocals.
She brought her living.
I don't know if it was hers, but it was a whole living room.
She brought her living
She
room.
had to have it a certain way, buddy. It was
comfortable.
It was
she wanted
pretty
to feel
funny.
like home. Well, bring my furniture.
Yeah, that was pretty funny, man. But hey, to each his own. And if you can afford it,
That's exactly right.
right?
Yeah.
That studio was a $2,000 a day studio, and she, it's a great sound.
She filled it with her furniture.
Well, I know
Yeah.
we've talked about people not being comfortable with Tim. People not being comfortable when they come to record. They're nervous. Their vocal ain't right.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
hey, if you want comfort, bring your home in.
That's a good
That's
point.
probably why she did it.
Yeah.
So she could feel, it was a comfort level thing. So
Now you could just fly out to her house and put the mic in, put some soundproofing.
That's what, we would do now.
yeah, Lionel Richie did an album with a bunch of country singers doing his songs.
Yeah.
They did all the vocals like in a hotel room down in the Caribbean. I'm
There you
serious. I saw a documentary.
Yeah, Shania was on that.
Shania was doing
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
The Chaotica or something, maybe.
They were
I don't
using
know
that,
what they used.
the thing you put up.
But
on
it was just a bedroom that they literally
it was,
they were in
a big
somebody's
suite, a
bedroom.
hotel room suite kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, I've done that before, and it sounds good. You take the mattress off the wall and you put it, and you put the mic next to it.
Yeah. Make it because it sounds good. No one's gonna say,
That-
"Hey, did Jed record with the mattress on the wall?" They're gonna be like, "Man, this
Yeah, man.
good."
You know what? That just shows you that if you really do your homework, you can get some great sounds in your bedroom, man.
All right,
Yeah.
Jed.
Bedroom.
I'm vouching for the
producers.
younger generations of the bedroom producers.
Do it.
When last quick story. So I got the phone call again from Warren, the owner of the studio. He goes, "Hey, Elisa's wants to do. They're bringing in a new thing called an ADAT." Right, that was when ADATs came out back in the
Wow.
90s. And he goes, they want to come and see how it sounds compared to the Mitsubishi, the big $150,000 recorder. The ADATs were like $3,000 a piece. For
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that'd be interesting. So I went in there and did the same thing. We had a Trident console, and we were A-Bing it. And we took the same material and we dumped it digitally to the ADATs that were on a digital 1-inch tape.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget Warren's comment and his face after we A-B'd it. He goes, "I will be out of business within 5 years."
Wow.
And it was true.
He was the Mitsubishi rep.
No, he was the owner of the studio.
The studio, Javelina.
He's
'cause he knew how
he
easy
knew
it was to acquire
the
that.
impact that it would have on the business because people would not come rent his. That studio was $1,200 a day. The other one was $2,000, and they wouldn't come rent a $1,200 a day studio to do overdubs when they can do it at their house with an ADAT.
And now he foresaw that you could record on your phone now
Yeah,
and just record on there in your closet.
And so he was out of it, or he quit the business within 5 years.
within 5 years he
was gone. Javelina's not there anymore.
He was also turned into a butcher. No, just
He's I think he's retired now, but that studio's still there. It's not called Javelina.
They converted it, or is it still a studio?
It's still a studio.
Oh, okay.
They were gonna take that building and tear it down,
right?
Because they're putting condo buildings all around Music Road now.
Yeah.
And the historical society said there's too many things that went down in this building. We got to save it.
Yeah.
And so somebody bought it, and it's now a historical building.
Because they were trying to do that with RCA building as well.
That's the RCA building I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the Javelina.
Okay.
That's where Javelina was, the RCA.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, Studio A.
Cool.
Studio B was always never going to be, because that was a museum. But Studio A was always just a building. Chet Atkins owned the building, so after RCA moved out, I rented space in that building because I knew him.
Right.
And so Javelina rented the studio, but the rest of the building was just office space.
Gotcha.
And so Warren rented it for 10 years, and then when that all happened, he couldn't stay open.
Mm-hmm.
So they were trying to tear it down and sell it to this company, but somebody else bought it.
Right.
Right. So somebody owns it, and now it's a historical. It'll never go away.
Cool.
Yeah.
Man, Jed, thank you so much, man.
Man, it's
Thank
been
you,
fun.
man.
This
That was
is
great.
awesome.
Yeah, man.
I've learned a lot. I'm sure our audience learned a lot.
I learned a lot.
We got to get you back on.
Hey, I'm coming
He's
here.
coming
a lot.
every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
We'll get you on every 2 weeks.
Yeah. There's a lot of technology that my son and I are going to do our own review technology kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know.
So before we sign off, where can people reach you and how can they reach you?
The best place you can see me, most of the stuff is my wife and I we have our own website with our music. We've been singing together for 35 years. It's jedandclaire.com.
jedandclaire.com.
Yeah, and then
we'll
you
put
can
all your
find-
links in the description. And show
Yeah,
notes and
yeah.
everything.
I'll give you all that, the little those
QR code.
QR codes and all that stuff. People can find us real easily. We're getting ready to put a new album out. Again, I'm starting. I've been people like Raymond been telling me you need all this knowledge you have. You should put it on. People need to hear it. I'm like, I guess I should be doing that. So, what happened with me, and it's the last thing I'll say. I got an opportunity when some of those top players and producers started figuring out what kind of an engineer I was. They wanted to bring me to the record company world and start with those producers, like the guy who runs the label, and start being that type of an engineer, because I was hanging with that crowd, right? But right when that happened, my wife and I got a record deal, and so I chose to do the record deal instead, right? And so we went the whole record deal route for 7 years.
You went as artist,
as an artist, as opposed to an engineer, and that took
Jed
me.
has a great voice.
Oh, thanks, man. So
He really does.
I chose to do that, which took me out of that world at a level, and I would have to go build it back up again. So I just didn't mess with it. And when I left the artistry world, we went straight into ministry. We moved here, actually, to Austin, Texas. And so that's been my path. So that's why I never, don't have the gold records on the wall by engineering stuff, because I chose to be an artist. We got a record deal. But I was right at the cusp of that, because Brent Rowan, who's the left-handed drummer?
I forgot his name.
Oh, gosh. He's a big time.
Left-handed.
Not Owen Hill, but the
Not
other guy.
one-handed.
I can't think of his name. Eddie Bears.
Eddie Bears.
I did a session with Eddie Bears, and he slammed his drums down and says, "Come here."
To you?
Yeah, to me. He goes, "Where the hell have you been?" Because it sounded like a set of drums on the mix, right?
Right.
And he loved the way it sounded in his headphones, because I'm a musician, right?
Right.
And so he's like, "Dude, I'm going to call up Tony Brown. I want him to, you got to get in that mix, dude."
Right.
I'm like, "Dude, I just got a record deal. I can't do it, Because you in Nashville, when you get the call, you got to go.
You got to go.
They're not going to call you back, because there's
Right.
too many guys lined up to take that slot.
Right.
So,
Man.
yeah, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, we got to get you on again.
Hey, I'd love to come back, man.
We'll do it.
Probably the good thing is I could start telling you guys some neat little things that I find.
Yeah.
Like that
we'd love
276. I got to talk about that one day.
Yeah, we got
love
to
that.
do a gear review podcast with Jed.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I
He's in
have
the
tricks
know.
how you can get a $500. You can spend $500 and get a $10,000 mic sound.
That's what we need.
We
to
need
talk
that
about.
right now, Jed.
Oh yeah. Well, if you go look for Jed Seneca pretty soon, you'll find that on the internet.
There you go.
Ah.
But I'll
That's
be
fine.
happy to come and help and talk to you guys about that stuff too.
Okay,
That'd be great.
Done.
Well, just a quick reminder, make sure y'all go to forwardproducer.com/ISP. Get the course completely free. Also, make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe, everything, do all that stuff. If you like the
Please.
content, share it with people. It's going to help us out a whole lot.
That's right.
So until next time, y'all, we'll see you later.
Peace.
Peace out.